How's it going, everybody? My name is Jesse. Welcome back to Continues to Tick. Another week has gone by. Another week of funneling money into the portfolio and watching it slowly grow. This was a good week for me overall in the portfolio. We didn't quite hit 8K yet, but the pace that we're going at is quite strong. And like I said, I'm very fortunate enough to be in a position to be able to fund $500 every week in the portfolio, and I haven't faltered on that yet. I've been very consistent on that, and I'm very thankful for being in the position to even be able to do that. But another good week, another week closer to the goal of ultimately retiring early or building up a nice passive flow, portfolio income pillow. It's happening. It's all incrementally happening over time, week at a time, technically day at a time. And the journey continues. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are doing well. Similar to, my other videos, I kind of have a little template of what I'm going to be covering in this video. So I'm going to be talking about 3 things that I've learned from being in the workforce for a year and a half. For a little background about me, I'm 25 years old currently. I work as a registered nurse. I graduated college in the fall of 2018. In the spring of 2019, I took my NCLEX, and at that point, it's when I officially became a registered nurse. I started applying to a variety of places. I got my foot in the door, worked as a correctional nurse at a local county jail, got some experience there for 6 months. When I initially applied for the county jail, I also had applied at a lot of state correctional facilities, and I was lucky enough to, after those 6 months, hear back from one of those state facilities, get my foot in the door for working for the state of California, which is where I'm at right now. The idea behind that is to ultimately build up a pension and retire with that pension and some other added benefits, such as health insurance and things like that. Thinking long term, that's where my mind went to instantly, was like, how can I best position myself for the future? So I figured going in and working for the state of California was one of the best ways to do it. I mean, if California is ultimately not doing well, a big chunk of the United States won't be doing well. California is one of the largest economies in the world. So I'm putting my bet there. We'll see ultimately how it plays out. Trying to build up a pension is one of the main reasons why I'm actually in this position, working as a correctional nurse for a state facility here in the state of California. With that being said, I've been in the workforce now for about a year and a half, and there's some things that I've learned. So in this video, I'll be going over 3 things I've learned from being in the workforce for this last year and a half. The first thing that I've learned is I don't want to work forever. It's actually quite funny. So before I even started working, as a registered nurse, when I was studying in college, I was already starting to think about how I can not work, in the future, before I even started working. Now that I'm working, I'm realizing that that same idea, it's still sticking with me. I don't want to work forever. When you start working in the workforce, you'll soon realize that it's easy to work forever. It's easy to go ahead and overspend or live above your means and get caught up in the whole spending cycle, that is our society today. When you do those things, you start to live above your means. You start to spend more money than you need to. You stop allocating money to things that will benefit you in the future, such as retirement. At that point, it starts to cycle and it, build upon itself. You start to realize that you're getting older in age. And then at that point, you start thinking about retirement. And before you know it, you've realized you've been working forever. At that point, when you realize, you're a little behind, you're going to be 40, maybe close to 50. And then at that point, you're going to start saving for retirement. And then you're still going to realize that you have to put another 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years in order to retire comfortably. And like I said, before you know it, you start to realize that you've been working forever. I know I'm only a year and a half into the workforce, which is very little in the grand scheme of things. But I'm already thinking about retirement. Like I said, before I even started working, I was already thinking about how not to work. Well, now that I'm working, I know I don't want to work forever, So I'm trying to find ways for me not to work forever. For me personally, I'm trying to build up a pension working for the state of California, but a lot of that is out of my control. I'm working and I'm building that pension in the background. But like I said, a lot of it's out of my control. The one thing I can control is how I spend my money, where I allocate my funds. So part of that includes building up this dividend portfolio. And then another one later on would be to invest into real estate. So I'm trying my best to control what I can, keeping in mind that I don't want to work forever. So as much as I want to get that, that new Ford Bronco or the Cybertruck that I actually pre-ordered, but I will likely cancel, maybe. I know I have to be smart with my money. especially if I don't want to work forever. The next thing that I want to talk about is that my time is most valuable. When I say this, I'm referring a lot of it to, being offered overtime. At my job currently, I've been offered overtime a lot. There's a lot of overtime to take, and there's a lot of people that do accept that overtime. They willingly want it, and they work a lot of it. For me, I initially felt bad for turning down this overtime. I would feel bad when they'd ask me because I would always say no, and I still say no now. I've gotten better at saying no, but it doesn't make it easy to say that, right? For me personally, overtime doesn't buy the time that I have that is free, right? My off time. For me, I'd rather have my off time than to make more money. I want to be able to be in a position to hold the power or the ability to say no to overtime, to be able to say that I don't need it. There's quite a bit of people that I've seen at work that say I need the overtime. And that's a pretty vulnerable position to be. It's almost an angle of desperation and, in the sense of feeling like you have to, give away your time for money. I know I'm only a year and a half into the workforce. I don't have kids. I don't have really big obligations. So it's easy for me to say no. But I hope to continue to be able to be in that position to hold that card to say no, for example, to overtime. Because for me, my time is most valuable. It's more valuable than the money. But it's almost like a double-edged sword because you can't, in a way, in today's society, have time or buy back your time without having money. So the second thing that I've learned from being in the workforce is my time is most valuable. And I'm currently in a position where I'm very fortunate enough to be able to allocate funds into my dividend portfolio, still save up for real estate, live within my means, and be able to say no to overtime. It puts me in a power position. It puts me in a position where I can honestly say that my time is most valuable. I'd rather spend my free time having it free than working. Having that time for me to spend with the people I love, doing things that I enjoy, rather than being forced back into the rat race, right? Of exchanging my time, my free time, my valuable time for money, if that makes sense. The third thing that I've learned about being 1.5 years into the workforce, like I said, I know it's a short amount of time, but I've learned that it's important to look out for yourself. For me personally, my experience is working in such a big department, such as the state of California. There's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of people above each other. And at what point do you get to actually see the top? Or is there even a top at the top? Or is it a house built with cards, right? As the saying goes. Working for such a big department, even as a nurse, I've realized that it's important to be able to look out for yourself, advocate for yourself, and ultimately be selfish. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. There's a good selfish. If someone ever decides to put you in a bad position, such as a supervisor, just realize they may not be doing it in bad taste. Their back might be up against the wall as well. But ultimately, if you get put in a position, you have to look out for yourself first. Because at the end of the day, no one else will do it for you. You have to be able to say no to that overtime if you really don't want it. If you want it, then that's different. Go ahead and take it. If you need it, go ahead and take it. But if you really don't want it, and someone's kind of putting you up against the wall because they're up against the wall, you have to be able to say no. You have to be able to look out for yourself, advocate for yourself, and stick up for yourself, especially when you work in big departments. Another thing that comes to mind when I think of this is, for me, as a new nurse, I went in very eager to be helpful, very eager to want to be rewarded, right? Want to be thanked, want to be noticed, that I would go out and do a lot of favors. Let's say on a Tuesday, right? I would be thanked tremendously for the work that I put in that day. And then Wednesday would come, and let's say, I really had to advocate for myself. I said no, or I said, I can't really do this. And then because it's Wednesday, I no longer am the favorite, or I'm no longer at the top of everybody else. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because tomorrow is going to be a new day. In a workforce, especially in a workforce as big as the state, when there's so many people involved, that's very common, I imagine. I haven't worked everywhere. I've only worked for the state. Maybe it's just a political thing that happens in the state. But just because we do something one day, it doesn't mean it's going to be thought of the next day. Tomorrow's a new day. So you always have to look out for yourself and what's best for yourself. So those are the 3 things that I just wanted to cover over. I know there's probably many more that I can come up with, or maybe just a few more that I can come up with. But those are just the ones that I wanted to talk about, the ones that I've noticed that are most prominent in the short amount of time that I've been in the workforce. Maybe I'll update these later as I go on. All right, so that was pretty fun to talk about. But now into the Jesse's cash flow portfolio. And take note, I'm probably going to rename this something else at some point. But when that time comes, just don't be shook. It will probably change at some point. Or not. Who knows? So here we are this week, guys, approaching 8K. We didn't cross it. I was like, maybe we might cross it in last week's video if we had a really great week. But we did have a good week. My portfolio overall is doing well. It's in the green overall, I think, based on the day, the week, and everything, the month, all time. We're in the green. So we've had a pretty good time here. But next week for sure, unless there's a really big dip in the market for whatever reason, I mean, the market's emotional, as I've talked about before, we should be crossing the 8K mark next week, which is exciting. Like I've said before, if you want to take a look into any of my actual holdings, there'll be a link down below in the description box to sharing my pie. Just go ahead and click on that and you can see everything that I'm holding and all my different allocated sectors here. Like I said, I'm not a financial advisor or financial planner, so I really don't like diving into those things in my videos, because I never really want to recommend anything to anybody. I'm just not at that level. I'm a complete newbie when it comes to this. I've done my research through YouTube, through reading, things like that. I just want to document my journey. That way maybe other people can relate, because I know I've been able to relate to others and watching their journeys along the way. So for this week, we had a really big snowball, as you can see. So I deposited the $500 and then we actually bought $506 worth of shares. So $6 more than what I deposited. I think this is actually the biggest snowball that I've had. Very noticeable. This is what's to come. This is definitely what's to come in the future. So I'm excited, but this is definitely a really big snowball, the biggest one I've had. With that being said, this week wasn't the biggest when it came to dividends. We got Cisco and Oracle, and I think that was it. Yeah, these were on Friday. So we got paid dividends. Some weeks are better than others, but this week was definitely the biggest snowball. So exciting times. And just to kind of go back a little bit, I did start this portfolio back on July 20th for those that are new. So it's a fairly new portfolio. I've just been funding it pretty quickly. Like I always say, I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to, funnel $500 every week, about $2,000 every month into this portfolio. I'm trying to retire early. I'm trying to build up the passive pillow. So, I'm excited to see the journey unfold. That's going to be it for this week's video. We had a pretty big topic discussion there in the middle. Next week, we're going to cross the 8K mark. I'm pretty sure of it, unless something crazy happens, which I guess I cannot be too surprised. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys on the next week's video. Continue along your journey. I'll continue along mine, and peace.